All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is Trevor. I'm with the Graduate Management Admission Council. I'm the Field Marketing Coordinator. For those of you that don't know, the Graduate Management Admission Council is the company that owns and operates the GMAT exam, which is used as an admission test all over the world. Most people think of it for business school, but it actually has a lot of different applications. So today I just wanted to go through for about a half hour, maybe 45 minutes, a little bit about the exam, how you can understand what the exam is about, and ways to prepare for the exam itself. So here's what we'll go over today during the session. First, I'll start off with just a little bit about what exactly the GMAT is. I'm sure because you're watching this, you've heard something about it, and you've maybe considered taking it even, or maybe you have taken it. So I'll give a little bit of detail about that, the history, the structure, all that kind of stuff. Where does the GMAT exam fit in with admissions? As you probably know, the GMAT exam would just be one portion of your overall application into a graduate program. So where does the GMAT fit in, and what are the other parts that schools will be looking for with your application? How does the GMAT exam help you prepare for school? So in preparing for the GMAT exam, we find that it's very beneficial not only to get a good gauge of a test score, but also to help you prepare for the actual school itself. We'll talk a little bit about score reports that you would receive after taking the exam. Ways to go about preparing. We have several things that can kind of help you get ready for the exam itself. So what are those items, and where can you find them? What's the actual testing experience like? It's a little bit different than maybe some of the tests you've taken in the past, so I'll just go over a little bit about the actual testing experience. I'll go over some myths that we commonly hear, and I'm sure that you have probably heard some of these as well that we'll cover. I'll tell you why they are myths and provide a little bit of factual information there. What else is available for school preparation? We also have some products that will actually help you get ready for school once you do take the GMAT exam. And then I'll give you a quick snapshot of our website, mba.com, to show you what's on there and what you can find there. So let's get started. So first off, what is the GMAT exam? The GMAT exam was created in 1954 by business schools for use by other business schools. And the test was designed in a way to be a fair and objective and also accurate measurement of a candidate's ability to do well within a graduate management program. So what does that mean? Pretty simply, you do well on the exam. It's a good predictor of the fact that you will do well in a graduate program. And schools really take that to heart. They really look at your scores, to see if you're going to be a good fit for their program. We do studies all the time, tons of research that goes back to the fact that that is true. As you see there, it's the most reliable predictor of academic success for graduate management programs. That's because of all the research we do and kind of checking up on how those students do when they actually enter a program. As you can see there, the GMAT exam is the most widely used assessment for graduate business and management admissions worldwide. It's also used by other programs, not just business, but a lot of people think of that right off the bat when they hear GMAT, MBA, that kind of stuff. So as you can see, the GMAT exam is accepted by over 5,400 programs in over 2,000 schools and in over 90 countries across the world. It truly is a global exam. Keeping with that global exam theme, while it's accepted pretty much all over the world, you can also take it pretty much all over the world. So there's continuous secure testing available in over 600 test centers around the world and in over 110 countries. As you can see there, the cost of the exam is not free. Unfortunately, we do charge a fee. That fee is $250. And what that includes is the testing, obviously, and then the ability to send your scores to up to 5 programs for free. There is the option to send it to more schools. Just know that a fee of $28 would apply there for every school above 5. A couple other quick costs. Make sure when you schedule your exam that you're going to be able to take it on that day. There is a rescheduling fee of $50. So have a good idea that you'll be able to take the test that day. And chances are, if you have to reschedule within a week of your test date, you will most likely have to pay the entire $250. So make sure you're going to be available on the day. In extreme circumstances, things come up. I know here on the East Coast we had a hurricane a couple of weeks ago, so things like that you might be able to reschedule, but don't count on it. Make sure you're going to be able to take the exam. We do see the candidates from time to time take the test more than once. So you're allowed to do that up to 5 times in a given year, once every 31 days. 20% of the people that take the exam take it again, and on average we see a 30-point gain amongst those people. Also, most schools will accept your highest score. Not all schools, but for the most part they will accept your highest score. So how does the GMAT exam fit in with the overall admissions process? So obviously the GMAT exam is just one part. If you take a look at this balance here, so on the left we have, let me see if I can do this. Over here we have the GMAT exam, and that's just part of the overall process. So how does it provide value to admissions folks? They can see your academic potential. That's kind of intuitive. Doing well on a test will show your potential to do well in their program, as I kind of mentioned before. It also helps to compare you as an applicant to other applicants. Looking at GMAT scores can kind of set you apart from other applicants. How's it valuable to you, the GMAT exam? Well, along those same lines, it gives you the opportunity to stand out in a crowd. You know, a high GMAT score can certainly show your potential, can separate you from other applicants. Maybe other parts of your application aren't as strong. Maybe you didn't have as good of an undergraduate GPA. Maybe you don't have as much work experience. A high GMAT score can certainly help you compensate for some of those areas. There are other intangible things like opening doors, personal confidence that can certainly help from the GMAT exam. And another thing that the GMAT exam will help you do is prepare for school. Reviewing the material, getting familiar with it will certainly help you with curriculum that you're going to be faced with in the graduate level. Things that are not measured on the GMAT exam that are important in the overall admissions process, things like your leadership skills, your team working skills, your job-related skills, specific business knowledge, spoken English, those things are not tested on the GMAT exam. They certainly will probably come out in other portions of the exam, let's say your interview or your personal essay, but not necessarily tested on the GMAT exam. So what is the GMAT exam? Well, for one, it's a CAT, or a computer adaptive test. That's important to remember. As you'll see in the upcoming slides, I'll explain to you a little bit about how the test works and exactly what do I mean when I say computer adaptive testing. So basically, the test starts out in the multiple choice portions of the test with a medium difficulty item. This means that normally 50% of the people get this question right, 50% of the people taking the test get it wrong. If you get a correct response, you go to a little bit of a harder question. If you get an incorrect response, you get an easier question. Basically, the more questions you get right, the harder questions you get. The more you get wrong, the easier questions you get. So we can kind of get your true ability level. Because of this testing structure, you cannot skip or go back. So once you answer a question, it's over and done with. And also because of this, every item counts within the scoring algorithm. So it's important to kind of focus your time and do well and budget your time correctly so you can answer all of the questions to your best ability. Again, this goes back to being accurate and efficient. It's also a very secure way of doing the test because of the computer software that we use. And we think that it provides the applicants with a better overall testing experience. So if you're like me, you like pictures, and hopefully this will help explain it a little bit better than I just did. So if you imagine here, we have along the x-axis, we have the first to the last question of the section. And along the y-axis here, we have easy going up to hard difficulty questions. And that relates over here to a low or high score. So let's say we're starting out in the middle here. And let's say you get that question wrong. So obviously it's going down to a little bit of an easier question, but that also correlates to a lower score. And you get that one wrong. Now your score is really dropping. But just because you've gotten 2 questions wrong doesn't mean you're out of luck. You get that one right. Now your score moves up a little bit. And you get another one right. and you get another one right, and so on. And then maybe you get another one wrong, and it brings your score back down a little bit. And then you're back up and down and up and down. So just because you're getting questions wrong, this is a very high score. This is how the computer adaptive model works. When you're in that certain range, which here is in the high range, as you can see, just because you're getting questions wrong doesn't mean you're not doing well on the test, because you're up in this high range. Now, if you were down here and getting questions wrong and sinking a little bit and then getting one right and wrong and right and wrong, that would correlate to a lower score. So hopefully that makes sense for everyone. You know, a lot of questions are asked about the computer adaptive model. I encourage you to go to MBA.com for some great resources that can maybe help you explain it further. So let's go over the 3 sections of the test that have been on it for years now. And then this one here, integrated reasoning, I will come back to because it is a new section this year. We launched it in June, so it hasn't been on the test for very long. So if you've been preparing for a long time, or maybe you've taken it in the past, I'll explain to you all about the new section. So let's go through the first 3 sections, minus the integrated reasoning. These sections of the exam are designed to measure your higher order thinking skills, meaning these are skills that, like analysis, synthesis, evaluation, that you've kind of developed over time. These are skills that you'll definitely need in business school or whatever graduate program you decide to enter into. But for that reason, you don't need a business background. We often see people with various types of backgrounds tend to do well on the exam because these are the higher order reasoning skills. So the first section that you're going to encounter is the analytical writing. And this section is designed to judge how well you can organize your thoughts and support your analysis. There's no right or wrong answer here. What we're trying to see is if you have an opinion and you can support your position. So you're going to be asked to analyze an argument, take a stand, support your position, show why that argument was effective, not effective, what assumptions that the writer may have made, that kind of thing. So again, no subject knowledge is required prior to this. We just want to see can you take a position and support it in a clear and concise way. The next section would be integrated reasoning, but like I said, we're going to come back to that. Then you'd have the quant section. So this is made up of 2 question types: problem solving. These are your traditional type questions: solve for X, given a few multiple choice answers, that kind of thing. And then also data sufficiency. And I will show you some examples of these in a second, but basically what we're asking for data sufficiency is, do you have all the information you need in order to solve a problem? The problem solving is testing basic math, understanding the basic concepts, and your ability to reason quantitatively. These are your typical math problems, like I said. Data sufficiency is a little bit different in that we're asking you to analyze a quantitative problem, recognize which information is relevant, and determine at what point there is enough information to solve that problem. We're not actually asking you to solve that problem. We're asking, do you have enough information to do it? I can tell you from personal experience, it takes a little bit of time to get used to this portion of the exam. So for me, I needed to prepare a little bit more on this section. After the quantitative section comes the verbal. This is made up of reading comprehension, critical reasoning, and sentence correction questions. The comprehension, you'll read a passage of about 300 words and then answer questions based on that passage. Critical reasoning, this is testing your reasoning skills involved in making arguments, evaluating arguments, and formulating some sort of plan of action. And sentence correction, this is where grammar and style of the English language comes into play. We're asking you to improve incorrect, ineffective expressions. So, show you quickly how the exam is set up, as I kind of touched on. So you'll start out with the writing. That's 30 minutes. Then you'll jump into the integrated reasoning, which is another 30 minutes. At that point, you're given the option of a break. Important thing to know, the breaks are 8 minutes, and no one is going to babysit you, so it's important to keep an eye on the time. If you get back after 8 minutes, the time will be deducted from your next section. The next section being quantitative reasoning. 37 questions there. You'll have 75 minutes to complete it, at which time you're given the option of another break. Then you'll come back and finish off the exam with the verbal section, which is 41 questions and 75 minutes. So let's go into some examples. So this is an example of a writing prompt. You'll be given a statement that you'll read there. And basically, what we're looking for is how well reasoned is this argument. And you'll kind of come up with an opinion there. We'll ask you to support your decision. Things to keep in mind: what evidence would make this argument stronger? We're not asking if the argument is right or wrong, or your personal opinion for that matter. We're asking, is this argument a sound one or not? So the quantitative reasoning section, as I mentioned, is made up of two types of questions. The first one being problem solving. So I think most people are familiar with these types of questions. As you can see there, you're given a math problem, and you're given multiple choice answers, and you basically pick the right one. One thing to note here is no advanced math is needed. As I mentioned before, we're just testing your higher order reasoning skills. So there's no calculus or anything like that. Along those same lines, you're not given a calculator. So it's important to kind of brush up on your math rules and things that would almost give you shortcuts to solving problems if you can remember them easily. Now, for the data sufficiency, all the questions will be in this structure. You'll be given a question up here, and then you'll be given two statements, 1 and 2. Now, we're not asking you to solve this question. What we're asking you to do is determine if you have enough information to solve the question using these two statements. So, all the answers in this section will look exactly like this. And they'll be in the same order every time. And what we're asking is, can statement 1 alone solve the question? Can statement 2 by itself solve the question? Do you need both of them together? Can you use them both separately to solve the question, or do neither of them solve the question? So again, it's a little bit different. Our natural inclination is to just solve a problem when you see it, but that's not what we're trying to find out here. We're trying to find out, do you have enough information to solve the problem with these two statements? In the verbal section, we'll have reading comprehension. So as you can see, there's a passage here on the left, and you'll be asked questions about it there on the right. Pretty self-explanatory. Critical reasoning is a little bit different, a little bit of a shorter passage. These are designed to test your reasoning skills, how well you evaluate arguments, and how well you can formulate a plan of action. So you'll be asked a question about the shorter passage and formulate a plan of action based on that. Sentence correction, basically what we're asking here is to fix the underlined portion of the sentence. You'll be given 5 multiple choice answers. The first one is always leaving it the same, or 4 different ways of putting that underlined sentence in there, or portion in there. So, I mentioned we come back to integrated reasoning. How did we get to this new section? Why did we just decide to add a new section to the exam? Well, first off, it started with some research. We surveyed over 700 faculty members, over 180 business schools. And this kind of led us to the development of the section. These are skills that the schools said they wanted. So basically, it's based on 4 pillars here. So, can you assimilate information from related materials? Can you interpret that information that you just brought together from some materials? Can you convert that into data that's useful for answering questions? And can you go ahead and evaluate different outcomes based on what you found? This, as I mentioned, was launched in June of 2012. So if you took the exam before June of 2012, this is going to be a new section that you're going to want to prepare for. There are 4 new question types that we've come up with for this section. So as you saw in the beginning, or a few slides ago, there are 12 questions. They might be made up of multiple parts, and I'll show you some examples in a second. There are some new response options also, pull-down menus. There's traditional multiple choice. There's columns and rows where you can respond, and there's true-false also. One thing to note here is you are allowed to use a calculator. It's provided for you in the exam software. This portion is also not computer adaptive. Also, because of the structure of the questions, there is no partial credit. As you'll remember from the last slide, we want you to be able to pull that data together and do something useful with it, so it's important to get all of the parts of the question correct. So this is the first example of a question type. This is multi-source reasoning. And basically, you'll be given some information here. The important thing to note is these tabs, which you can tab back and forth to, as hopefully that makes sense as to why you need to assimilate information. And then you'll answer a series of yes/no questions. Table analysis, as the name implies, you'll analyze the table. This can be sorted much like an Excel spreadsheet. And then you'll answer some series of yes or no questions based on that. Graphics interpretation, again, not just a clever name. You will interpret a graphic here. It's not always a Venn diagram. Sometimes you'll see a scatter plot, bar chart, those kind of things. Then you'll fill in these drop-down menus here to make these sentences correct. Two-part analysis, you'll be given some information up here and be asked to choose the right answer in each one of the columns. So hopefully that makes sense. Like I said, it's a very new section, only coming out in June of this year. So I encourage you, if you want to learn more information about it, go to mba.com. This is just some feedback from students. So as you can see here by these charts, the skills being tested in the integrated reasoning section are not only important in graduate management education, but they're also skills that you'll see and need to use in the corporate environment. So how does the GMAT exam help you prepare for business school? You know, all these questions and sections, we didn't just come up with them just to create a test. These are skills that you're going to need in business and management schools and in the corporate world itself. So, as you can see in the middle here, we have a lot of skills that you'll need for business and management schools. You're gonna be faced with a lot of discussion-oriented classes. You'll be asked to analyze arguments and take an informed position, much like the analytical writing assessment and the verbal section. We're asking you to evaluate a wide range of data on the exam, but you'll also be asked that in a business or management program. Determine what information is critical and sufficient. Again, that can directly correlate to the quantitative section. Synthesize reading, evaluate different arguments, formulate actions. Again, that correlates right to the verbal section. And we want to see that you can write in a clear and effective way, and that's something that business and management schools love to see also. So score reporting. Obviously, if you take the exam, you would expect to see your scores and get a report based on that. So you'll get a score report up to 21 days after the exam. It usually comes much sooner than that, but don't risk it with application deadlines. Always give yourself that buffer in case it does take the full 21 days. You're going to get a total of 5 scores. One being a total overall score. You'll get a verbal score, a quantitative score, an integrated reasoning score, and an essay score. Along with your scores, you're given a percentile table so you can kind of see where you fit in, and I'll show you a screenshot of what those look like in a second. When you leave the testing center, you're actually given an unofficial score report, so you can pretty much see how you did on the exam. Obviously, there's a human grading component to the essay portion, so that's the reason it might take a little bit longer to get your scores back. Good thing here is your test scores are good for 5 years. So maybe you're just finishing up school, undergraduate, and you want to take the exam now because you have a little extra time, but you're going to work for a few years. Perfectly fine. We see that a lot. Your scores are good for 5 years. Here's an example of what the percentile tables look like. So you can see what the mean score is. You can see where you fit in compared to other test takers. I believe this data is from last year. So the average score for all unique test takers is 566. Most of the people, the middle 80%, score between 400 and 710. So above 710 is really the best of the best, and below 400, I guess, wouldn't be. On MBA.com, you do have the ability to view class profiles to see what type of people that they accepted. A lot of tiny writing here. Don't really need to focus on it now, but when you are preparing for the exam, this is available on MBA.com. You can kind of see how the essay is graded. What makes a 6 essay, what makes a 5 essay, and so on. So what are some ways to prepare for the exam? Well, first I would start off by saying make sure you register early. Depending on your location, appointment times vary, and days that are open vary. You want to make sure you get that right time that you can actually sit down and take the exam. Give yourself at least 30 to 60 days. That way you can prepare for the exam itself. And then when you actually take the exam, give yourself time before application deadlines are due. Like I said, it could take up to 3 weeks to get your score, but you also want to give yourself time to retest if need be. On MBA.com, as you can see here, you can register to take the exam, you can learn more about the exam, and you can find a testing location nearest you. If you have some sort of disability that would require an accommodation, maybe you need more time on the exam, for example, you can also find information on MBA.com about that. I get asked a lot, how long should I prepare for the exam? And that kind of depends on a lot of different things. How disciplined are you in studying? What's your study environment like? Are you comfortable with the various test items? For me, I was not comfortable with data sufficiency, and that took me a while to kind of get used to. Are you going to take a prep program? I know a lot of the programs out there run about 12 weeks. So you want to make sure you have that time. And like I said, if you need to retest, make sure you have that time built into your overall timeline as well. And your scores are good for 5 years. So on MBA.com, you can find information in our store about all of these products. I'll just go through them all quickly here. We'll start out with the GMAT handbook. This kind of takes you through all of the logistical pieces of actually taking the exam. Things like what time should I show up for my appointment, what kind of ID do I need to bring to the testing center, all that kind of good stuff. These are the official review guides. So we have the official review guide, we have the quantitative review guide, and the verbal review guide. The overall guide here has quantitative, verbal, writing, and IR pieces to it. If you need more practice, that's when you would go to the quant review and the verbal review. The good thing about these guides are that they are the only guides that have official retired GMAT exam questions. So the only time you're going to see an actual GMAT exam question is when you're actually sitting for the exam. GMAT Write, as the name implies, will help you with the writing portion of the exam. Paper tests are available. If you feel like you just need to sit down with a pencil and paper and take a practice exam, you can certainly do that. Just know that the exam itself is only offered on computer. GMAT Focus. This is a diagnostic exam to kind of help you get ready for the quant section, and it'll kind of show you where to focus your review efforts. As you can see here, the app version of the guide is also available. GMAT Prep software also is a great resource because it's available on our website for a free download. This software includes 2 free practice exams. And did I mention that it was free? So register for MBA.com, you can download that software. This is a screenshot of MBA.com. This is where you would download the prep software. This is where you can register to take the exam, etc. As you can see down there, that's where you would download the prep software. So this is the official guide. It includes a diagnostic test, see what you need to work on. It includes all sections of the exam, as well as answers and explanations, that kind of thing. It also provides you with some test-taking strategies, the actual directions to the exam, an answer key, as I just said, and explanations. So very valuable resource. And as I mentioned before, this is the only review guide that has official retired GMAT questions. These are screenshots from GMAT Focus, which I mentioned will help you kind of hone in on where you should be focusing in terms of the quant preparation. So what is the GMAT testing experience like? Believe it or not, a lot of the testing centers, actually all of them in the U.S. for that matter, are exactly the same in setup and down to everything like the paint on the walls. When you come into the testing center, we'll ask you for your ID, we'll take a signature, we'll take a digital picture of you, and we'll do this kind of palm vein scan here, which this person is doing here. And it's basically like a fingerprint without the ink. It's a unique pattern that you have in the palm of your hand that no one else has, and it can be used to identify you. Now, why are we doing that? Basically to make sure it's you taking the exam and you are who you say you are. Believe it or not, out there are a lot of people that get paid money to actually take the exam for people, and we try to cut down on that. Along those same lines, we take cheating very seriously. We allow you the use of a locker because you can't really bring anything into the testing center, and that's just to cut back on cheating. Really the only thing you can bring into the testing center is your ID and the key to that locker that we'd let you use. As I mentioned, all the testing centers pretty much look the same. This is a good example of what a testing center looks like. There are individual testing stations. There's a proctor that can help you with any questions. You're given the use of a noteboard in lieu of scratch paper. It's a dry erase board that you can scribble on or do math problems, that kind of stuff. The room is video monitored. Before you take the exam, you're given the option to send your score reporting to different schools. So have an idea of the 5 free schools that you would like to send your reports to. After you take the exam, you're given the option to cancel your scores. If you had a really bad day, you might want to consider this. The important thing to know is that you won't be able to see your scores. So once you finish the exam, they'll ask you, do you want to submit or cancel your scores? If you cancel, you'll never see them, and neither will school. An unofficial score report is also given to you when you leave, like I mentioned before, so you'll pretty much have a good idea of how you scored on the exam. So, as I mentioned, there are a lot of myths out there. I'm going to go through just some of them that I hear commonly. There are tons, but these are the top ones. A lot of people think that I need a super high score to get in a top school or a top program. If we go back to the very beginning of the presentation when I showed the overall admissions process, if you remember, the GMAT exam is not the only part of your admissions process. Maybe you have a little bit of a lower GMAT score, but you knock out the interview and you kill it on the personal essay. So it's important to keep in mind that don't get discouraged if you don't get that 750 that you were hoping for. It's just one part of the overall admissions process. I think there's one person at Harvard Business School that scored in the 400s on the exam. So just an example, keep that in the back of your mind. Only the first 10 questions count. If you think back to our computer adaptive model, while you could score pretty highly on the first 10 questions, if you start getting questions wrong after that, it's going to make your score take a nosedive. So it's important to focus on all the questions equally. If you're getting easy questions, that means you're doing badly. What I would tell you here is that what's easy for you may not be easy for someone else. You may be good at a particular area of math, whereas most people struggle. What's important is to not worry about the difficulty level of the questions. Just answer the questions in front of you and do your best. It's important to know, too, that in the sections we also include experimental questions that are being tested for future exams that won't count to your score. So if you think a question is really easy, it might not even be counting towards your score. So don't really get hung up on the difficulty level of the questions. As I've touched on before, advanced math is not needed. We're testing your reasoning skills, not your higher level math skills. Accuracy versus finishing. It's important to finish the exam. If you're struggling with a question, it's better to guess than move on than it is to run out of time and not answer questions. And that kind of goes back to the computer adaptive model also. So what else is out there to help you get ready for school? Well, we have a bunch of products that can kind of help you after you take the exam and you get accepted into that program. GMAT Prep, or Essential Prep, accounting, statistics, finance, quant, all that good stuff is basically a refresher course to get you ready to go back to school. My Access, what you see there, is a business writing tool, which will kind of help you with resumes and cover letters, that kind of stuff. So what else can you find on MBA.com? Another screenshot. You can do research on schools. You can do research on the exam itself. You can also access our store through MBA.com and find all the products that I just mentioned. Best way to connect with us is through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This is the best way to get your questions answered in a quick way. I know on Twitter we had an NBA chat today. You can definitely ask schools questions as well as the GMAT folks questions. So that's it, and I will be available to answer questions. And if you don't get your questions answered, feel free to reach out via these channels. Thank you.